Hey, what's up guys? Michael from Karate Breakdown. I'm here to bring back practical karate. So Chris from Karate Unity reached out to me. He's an old friend from the old karate culture dojo days. He suggested we revisit the idea of karate structures and frames. So I'm just gonna pull up our old video here. I'm gonna have it play in the background. I'm gonna talk to it. I'm also gonna bring up some new points. Frames essentially is like someone's rushing in, you got to put something up, a guard or something, or push them away. You need to put a strong anatomical structure in front of you so that you don't get taken back and your posture gets broken down. You could do it at the head level, you could do it, someone's trying to tackle you at the waist level, you could do it on the ground. If you're in the bottom of side control, you put a frame across the neck so that they can't pressure into your chest anymore, so you can breathe a little bit. But all these things are examples of frames that don't rely just on your muscles, because then you'll just get tired, but they rely on your bone structure and efficiency of movement, right? With that said, to me, at this point in time, the idea of frames, it can make or break a fight. If you break down a fight or a confrontation into two categories, it's either static or dynamic. And I know a fight is never going to be completely static. Even if you're in the clinch and it looks like nothing's happening, you know that there's tons of tension amongst the two fighters. There's pushing, there's pulling, jockeying for position, there's trying to get into the inside, dynamic mental gymnastics that's happening. Is he going to strike here? Should I strike that? Should I feint for this? There's all this stuff happening, but to the untrained eye, it looks kind of static, right? That's why you get tons of people, UFC fans, they boo at a fight when they're on the ground. It's boring to the untrained person. I mean, it's boring to me too to watch. If you think about the idea of frames, the only thing that's saving you from forward pressure is a strong and anatomically correct frame. And you see this all over in kata. If you think karate is just a striking art and there's no clinch involved, then you would think their katas would just be punches and kicks and forward movement and dashes, right? I talked about this in a previous video. It's like, why wouldn't you have like footwork drills in your katas? Why won't you have spins? Why don't you have like faster shuffles and shuffling side kicks? Well, it's because the clinch-based art was striking. So there are moments when you look at the arms, they don't look like strikes, they don't look like blocks, they look like you're pushing against something or bracing against something. And that's very interesting to think, because your hands, I always tell people, your hands are kind of like the steering wheel of a car, but your footwork, your base, your center, that's the engine, right? If you think about that, you have to direct your opponent's energy away from you, reroute it away from your center, and then use your stance and use your footwork to drive them into that new direction. The only way you could do that is with a strong, solid frame. And there's a few ways you could think about frames too. You could think about them as wedges. We talk about wedges a lot in jiu-jitsu, especially when you're on the ground. If you think about grappling, especially ground fighting, you don't have the luxury of movement on all your planes. If you're on your back, you're essentially pinned against the ground because your opponent has their weight, they have gravity working with them. You're fighting at a deficit. The same thing happens if you're pinned against the wall. It's the same thing. It's like ground fighting, but rotated 90 degrees on the wall. And the reason why that's interesting and why it's relevant to frames is that if you don't have a strong frame keeping your opponent away, or at least maintaining their distance away from your center, your core, they are going to eventually close the distance, break down your posture, eventually take you down or strike you, right? So frames can be used defensively for sure. Frames can also be used offensively. We talk about crashes a lot. If you think about a frame as a wedge, I always think about the front of a train, the cow catcher, or the front of an arrow, like an arrowhead. It's made to pierce through. So a frame can be used to create a solid structure around yourself so that you move forward and through your opponents. And in doing so, it'll redirect them to the angles. Whatever frame you create, it redirects them to those angles. So yeah, breaking it down to like three major things. A frame can be preventing your opponent from closing the distance on you, breaking down your posture. It can be used as a wedge or a point. I always think about like Mission Impossible when they're like trying to go through a vent fan and they need to put an obstruction there. So they're gonna throw like, I don't know, the chair leg into that fan so that it stops, so they could squeeze through that gap. That's what I think about a wedge, right? You have all this movement for your opponent. They're striking you, they're trying to take you down, they're doing all these things. You need a mental reset or a physical reset. So you put a structure up there that kind of blocks their movement, kind of holds them in place so that you can kind of catch your breath, recalibrate, reset the fight, and then start over and hopefully turn the tides towards your favor. Similarly, a frame can be used for bracing, right? If someone has forward momentum on you, if you don't sprawl or if you don't strike them to make them get onto their back foot, then you need some type of frame to keep them away. And this relates to what I started the video with, is like, you are always at a deficit in a fight if you are trailing backwards on your heels. And you hear that a lot in MMA and boxing. He has him on his heels, he's backpedaling. And especially if somebody is trying to go for a double leg or a tackle and you're unable to sprawl in time, right? You're unable to get your legs out of the way and get your chest on top of them. That can result in you getting taken down. If you're not comfortable on the ground, then that's not a great place to be, right? So even if you are comfortable on the ground, that's not a great place to be. So with that said, the frame is like a physical reset within a fight that can either buy you some time, it can change someone's offense against you into a stalemate, or it can quickly change your defense into an offense, right? It's the real reset within a fight. Because if you're always fighting at a deficit, you're always just one step behind. I wish I could visualize this better on screen, but I think of like maybe like a Likert scale, you know, like a 5-point scale with 0 in the middle. And then there's like -3 on one side and +3 on the other side. A fight starts at 0 if you're not ambushed, or a match starts at 0 if you're not ambushed in self-defense. And it's the bars is going left to right, left to right, left to right. Like -3, you're in a bad position. +3, you're in good. You get reversed, you're back to -3, and it's just going on this slider that's going back and forth. Well, if you're just constantly in a -3 and you're about to lose a fight, a frame is going to help you put it back to 0. At the very least, kind of reset and recalibrate, lets you think. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but that's kind of my thoughts nowadays on frames. It's everything. It's like, it's not even just techniques that can be frames. It's a mindset that you need frames in addition to your attacks, in addition to your counters. I would even call it like a mastery of its own range, right? Because you could think you could fight in the clinch with strikes, you could fight from a distance, you could fight on the ground, you get your throws in, but a structure or frame can happen at all of those ranges, right? So it's a mastery of a skill set amongst all the ranges. Hopefully that makes sense. So for part 2, check out Chris Hansen at Karate Unity. Thanks Chris again for trying to start this collaboration. And then who knows, maybe I'll do some more collaborations with other creators out there as well. So hope you like this video, and catch you on the next one. Train hard, fight easy.